You're listening to the Coffee and Technology podcast brought to you by Cropster. In today's episode, we speak with Sasa Sestic. Sasha is the 2015 World Barista Champion from Australia and is the founder of Ona Coffee and Project Origin Coffee. Sasha is well known for also popularizing the Carbonic Maceration post-harvest processing method. Today, Sasha is focused on coaching up-and-coming barista champions, as well as consulting various producers worldwide on best practices to maximize quality. Sasha discusses his journey from Handball Olympics to the WBC, the challenges and opportunities with coaching up-and-coming baristas, and how technology has enabled the way he enhances coffee quality from producers to cafes. All right, Norbert, welcome, man. It's exciting to be back doing this. Happy New Year. How are you?
Yeah, Happy New Year. This is awesome. I'm very excited about today's guest.
Yeah, it's super exciting. With that, I'd like to welcome Sasa Sestic. So welcome to the podcast, man. It's super exciting to have you here.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year to both of you and all of your listeners as well. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I mean, just honestly, to kind of just jump straight into it, I mean, I'm sure most of the coffee world may know who you are. If you don't, I'm sure they will continue to know. But if you can kind of tell us a little bit about just kind of, who you are really quick, and then a quick your journey in coffee from Olympian to World Barista Champion.
For sure. So it's actually, Sasa Sestic. Many people know me as a World Barista Champion. I'm a founder of Ona Coffee and Project Origin, as well as a new company that we just launched last year, Nucleus Coffee Tools. And I've been in the coffee since 2003, as you've mentioned. I have been, actually, the reason I came to Australia is because of European handball. During the civil wars in Yugoslavia, when our country split, my family and myself decided to leave the country so we can continue pursuing our dream to become professional sports people. And Australia for us was, I guess, one of the smartest decisions we could make, because we thought we have opportunity to possibly play Olympics if we qualify. And within 2 years, we were kind of guaranteed to be able to get Australian citizenship. So the goal was always that after we play Olympic Games, hopefully we can go back to Europe and continue playing professionally. It was a bit difficult for us, being from where we are to travel during the war crisis. And but that, we played Olympic Games, obviously, which was amazing experience. We played few world championships. The reason I keep saying we, it's my brother and myself.
Okay.
He's the older brother, and he was always a lot more talented in handball than myself. So I was kind of just following his footsteps, and he's always been my inspiration. But in 2003 is when my wife, back in 2000 I got married. 2003 my wife was pregnant with our daughter Anna, and I did not quite get some contracts that I was hoping to get, and my handball career was sort of being questioned. And since my wife was pregnant, I thought I need now to get a real job to do something for living, to feed the family. Started working in hospitality. I've done many different things in hospitality. I've actually always had a passion for hospitality, hence why I've done the studies in hospitality as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when there was a time for me to stop handball, which was the World Championships in Portugal, January 2003, I needed to act really fast. And so I knew I wanted to do hospitality, but I guess I picked best of the bunch, which is a coffee. So it wasn't that I started coffee like many of my colleagues. They said, I've tasted this coffee. It was amazing. Changed my life. I started with coffee. For me, it was a very different story. I started a coffee because, I needed a job, and I loved hospitality, of course, and coffee was the best on offer what I've seen. Back then, I didn't really drink coffee. And so I didn't fall in love because I love coffee. Or the taste of the coffee, which is really odd, because now I feel that I'm very detailed with my taste. But back then was mostly, I don't know, just love connection with the people. Like it was the idea of making something and creating something with your hands. Maybe handball, coffee hands, maybe that was that association. I don't know. But more importantly, I love that feeling when I provide, when I give my best to make that coffee as tasty as possible, give it to a customer, and waiting for the feedback, and if I get a good feedback and say, hey, that was a really nice coffee, that these things would make my day. I would go home happy and I say, oh, I can't wait to make it even better tomorrow. And only 2-3 years later is when I actually tasted a coffee in Sydney, which is from Mecca Coffee Roastery, 2006, 2007, from Ethiopian Beloya. Natural process that tasted like blueberry muffin and all of these fruits, and I thought, like, no way, this is coffee. Like, I've been in the coffee for a while, like, you can't taste this good. And it made me completely obsessed that I obviously love the taste. I wanted to have more of that coffee. Following there, they said, we don't have any more, but there's more of this coffee in Melbourne in this other cafe. So I actually flew to Melbourne just to taste that again. Loved it. I confirmed it was not, it was just like, this is just coffee, natural product that just tastes unbelievable. Obviously, that coffee made me obsessed to fly to Ethiopia and Beloya 3 years later to actually experience that myself. And that's kind of a little bit of my coffee story, coffee obsession, that, the more I do it, the more obsessed I am with a coffee, or maybe passionate. I call it passionate. My wife says obsessed. So, yeah.
There's a thin line between both.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah, sorry for going a little bit longer, but yeah, I tried to condense it as much as I could.
I think this is very inspiring, actually, Sasha, because a lot of people start in hospitality in that situation, and not necessarily. I mean, of course, we know a lot of people who were converted by that beautiful cup, or by that almost religious experience they had. But a lot of people just start somewhere, and your example is fantastic. So it's not that you have to be trained from like small up. You can train your taste buds. You can get into the whole thing, and you become a master and a world champion by following your path, basically, and your passion, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's been a great journey. The way I look at a coffee, it's like the big hole without end. You just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's beautiful. Like, there's no end. And that's probably one of the reasons why I love it so much. The moment you discover some new things, you have your times to celebrate what you've discovered and enjoy it and maybe, taste. But then after a while, after a few months, you go, okay, what's next? What else can we do? And I think that we are, at least I consider myself lucky to do what I love. Every morning when I wake up, I go to work happy. And I'll try to do anything I possibly can to continue that passion and that drive.
I love it. So maybe we could, with that as well, if you could tell us a little bit about, like, not just the journey to become world champion, but like the mental journey it took for you to eventually get to winning World Barista Championship.
Yeah.
What kind of what were we able to take from being an Olympian and apply that to your approach to becoming, World Barista Champion? And and also during that, why you chose, like the coffee you chose, and the season of it was harvested and whatnot. It's interesting for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, my competition journey in coffee was 7 years of competing, and I can kind of put it like 2 half times. First half times is 3 years, where when we talk about the Olympic Games and a sport, in the first half time, I think I was about to quit and not even finish the second half. I was that, or possibly many people would, because I've competed for the first 3 years. There was no competition in the city where I live, in Canberra. So not many people were interested in specialty coffee back then. And so not only that I had to compete and I had no mentor, no one to show me, but we needed to organize another 5 competitors that not necessarily wanted to compete. So I asked my delivery driver in a company, hey, can you please compete? I said, no. I said, please. I said, okay, if you want me to. I said, yeah, I want you to. So, and you can imagine I had another 5 similar conversations, or 4, because we needed to come up with 6 people. And and for the year to year, we would go to these national competitions, and people from ACT would look like a bunch of, I don't know, people have no idea what's going on, as we have had no idea what's going on, and completely unorganized, like tourists, maybe. We used to say that when I used to play handball. And when you play against a team that's not interested, it's how we played against tourists. So I think we look like tourists, going to these events and just happy to be there, right? Because you see your coffee idols, but you have no idea what's happening. So for first 3 years, I finished last in the semifinals, and even had some, I guess, impressions or comments, and you could see that you don't really belong here. Like you could see that people that are in a behind in a backstage, they don't necessarily want to spend time with you, because like, who are you? I'm just gonna waste my time being, with the last guy again. So quick hi, or the best I get is a nod, and they nod to me, and that's it. We move on. And I think this is important part of the story, is because there might be listeners that they don't have mentors, they don't have maybe finance or budget, or they don't really have, and even the surrounding around them is sort of people ask questioning, why are you doing this? Like you keep coming here, you keep losing, but deep down, I wanted to prove myself that I can do it for me. Not necessarily winning back then, but that I actually belong to this, because I felt I belong. And that's the most important part, is when you go to these competitions, when you're competing, that you want to have that feeling that you belong. And if you don't, work hard, to do anything you can, so you can get to that level. Like for me, the precious 10 minutes of my year was 10 to 15 minutes time that I was given with the judges after I compete, and when I have a debrief with them, and when they say, okay, this is all bad, but what's the worst thing that I've done? and let's work on what was not quite right. But as I mentioned, possibly even judges did not feel that I belong. I didn't. Competitors did not feel that I belonged there, but we kept going. We didn't stop. After 3 years of keep going and hitting your head in a wall, you can only do it so many times. And then after the event, I actually decided to ask judges, what can I do? A lot of these people have been competing for 3 years. They progressed, like someone like Craig Simon, who was number 3 in the world, number 4 in the world a few years later, or Matt Pega. We kind of all started in the same time. I did not even manage to get to the finals after 3 years, but they became Australian champions, and gone to the worlds and have done very well in the world as well. So I wanted to ask these judges, because judges usually give you the feedback on the score sheet, what you've done right, what you haven't, or what has not been great. They don't really coach you. So we went to the club after party. They had a few drinks, so they were happy. I said, I'm gonna go and talk to them now. And I said to them, hey, what can I do? I love this. This is my passion. I live it, I breathe it, I think about it 24/7. Obviously, I'm not improving. Is there anything you can recommend that I can do? And they could see that, they could feel my pain, I guess. They could see that I'm very passionate about, that I actually really love barista competitions. Maybe handball helped me because I didn't give up. Like when you play professional sport, you don't ever give up. Once whistle, this was my first time. That's why I call it. And in a half time, I had a chat with my judges, and they told me you need to start traveling. You are in Canberra, there's no specialty coffee, you need to start traveling. But what they meant start traveling is go to Sydney and, start tasting these coffees from Sydney more, go to Melbourne. But I kind of heard that maybe it was a bit noisy in the club, but I heard them start traveling, meaning globally. And then I got inspired that moment. I said, I got to go to farms, of course. And I said, of course it makes sense because, growing coffee and farming coffee is like, it's the product that we use, and I have no idea about it. I don't know anything. Yes, I roast coffee. I understand brewing coffee to certain level, obviously, but my knowledge is absolute zero on what happens on the farms. And so 2010-11, I started traveling to all of these farms. And I loved it. I think I found my purpose and my why for coffee when I started traveling to the farms, because I connected with the coffee producers. I traveled, maybe 150 days per year, universities, coffee research centers, farmers, living a life as a farmer for several months in Nicaragua. And like picking coffees, like just doing everything to really understand not just the product itself, but to understand the people that grow that product, more importantly. And then 12 years later, I came back to competition, and it really helped me. Didn't help me with the competition, it actually helped me to find my why in coffee, which I didn't have before, like something that really drives me, that, destination where I drive every day of the year for, so many years together. And next year I came back. I finished number 3 in Australia. A year before, I finished number 4, which was a bit disappointing because I thought I can do it well. But then I've learned in 2014 that it's all about teamwork, which I didn't have as much, because 2014 was one-man show. I picked my coffee, I fermented my coffee, I roasted my coffee, I brewed my coffee. Like, I did not really rely on the team. Even though when I looked around, I think I have, most amazing team. These people are just ridiculous that work with the company. But then obviously I needed an official coach. So Hidenori Izaki decided to coach me in 2014. And in the 15, we presented, I guess, best version of Sash that helped to win Australia as well as helped to win WBC.
That's amazing.
So yeah, that's a little bit of a 7-year journey, but I guess for anyone that's listening, follow your inner feeling. And when people tell you don't belong or this is not good enough, these people are probably they should be doing you a favor, because they're going to make you work even harder, and they can make you to prove them wrong, that they're not right. So when someone kind of discomforts you, use that as a compliment or as a motivation, actually, so you can do a lot more. That's what I've done. A lot of people have doubted in that. Yeah, the boy from the small city cannot have a win, Australian or not, especially worlds. But I think that idea brought us closer within our own team. And yeah, we've achieved something pretty significant, we believe.
Very inspiring. I think it's super relevant for many people who start out and want to get to something. And I think that I was very lucky to experience the coffee industry as a more inclusive and a little bit more open industry. But also there is, of course, certain corners and certain edges. And I've never competed in a formal competition. I only competed on the technology side for a new product in the market. And actually one of my, one of the first big supporters back then were Australians who came and said, "This is a great product. We want this." This is like, Norbert, keep going.
Yeah. I'm not sure what year we started using your products. Maybe 2010. I don't remember, but we've been working with your products for many years, and obviously loving it. So I believe Mark Dundon was one of the first ones in Australia to get it. He's a coffee god, that I call him, in Australia. He's definitely inspired many of us. So yeah,
very true.
No, it's interesting. And I want to get into kind of also, a little bit deeper on the technology side eventually in this episode. But before that, I am curious as well, off of your story to become World Barista Champion, what was so impactful? So you obviously during that competition used the Carbonic Maceration coffee. At the time, from my understanding in the coffee industry, just anything fermented and anything experimental was taboo at the time, and it wasn't a thing. And I'm curious to know why you decided to go that route. And I mean, you really pushed the boundaries with that. And yeah.
So as I mentioned, like in 2011, when I started traveling to the farms, that's where I knew that this is where I belong. This is my purpose, to actually work with the farmers, to collaborate with them, and to fix the issues that we have currently. I look at a coffee chain that, yes, we all work together, but the weakest part of the chain are coffee farms, and maybe coming from torn war countries or smaller places. Like, I always go with the underdogs, and I believe that coffee farmers are underdogs in our chain. And so I wanted to see what I can do to make that better, right? Every time when I tasted so many coffees over so many years, because since 2011 I've been at least 80 to 100 days overseas on the farms, so like many years, many farms. And that the idea actually drove me to even buy a coffee farm myself in 2013, which is our first farm in Honduras. So I can continue experimenting, pushing the boundaries, and finding the solutions. And for me, one of the biggest issues was that when you taste many same processed coffees on the table, there's a lot of inconsistencies in these lots. Due to different temperatures. Every day, we'll have different temperature with the way we ferment the coffees. Possibly, fermenting the coffee in one place one day and the other place another day without realizing we have different microbes. And that all will make an impact how coffee tastes like. And also back then, I don't think we were measuring fermentation to the level that we needed to. So there was no pH meters, no bricks, none of the tools that we actually should use. It was done mostly, we normally ferment our coffee for 2 days, so 1 day and that's it. It's recipe by father or uncle or whatever it is, without really understanding what's the potential that we have in a bean, what are the things that we can avoid when we ferment, and what are the things that we can highlight when we ferment coffee. So it's like carbonic maceration, maybe for many people came overnight, but for me it was just a building a process of 2-3 years working hard, finding the solutions, till I came across carbonic maceration idea, which idea obviously was borrowed from the wine industry. So it's not that I come up with something brand new. And the reason I've came up with carbonic maceration is I wanted to have process without oxygen where we can continuously keep flushing the CO2 out, so we can minimize presence of oxygen in that environment, which means we can extend the fermentation for longer. And also we can do it in this smaller tanks, so we can actually ferment the coffee in the temperatures that we desire, because at different temperatures we will attract different microbes. For example, for my espresso coffee that I used in 2015, after a lot of work and a lot of different failures, we've learned that at 20 degrees our coffee was tasting sweetest. When we're making espresso, we obviously want to provide the sweet cup. Not many people like high, unbalanced, bitter notes or drying notes, or even delicious acidity that we love so much. But in the espresso, sometimes even it's not balanced or maybe less present than the sweetness, it's not going to score high. So that was number one step, is how do I do process to get more sweetness in a cup. And then secondly was, what can I do to allow the flavors that are coming from the coffee to be a little bit more pronounced? Because often when we serve for espressos to judges, few will taste notes that we taste, the other few might not taste, or these notes might be subtle. So my initial goal with the CM was not necessarily to change the flavor profile, just to make sure that I normally say, is this 1 tick, 2 tick, or 3 ticks, to make them 3 ticks. 3 tick means we can taste a lot of that flavor. That's normally when we taste, we kind of would write, is it a little bit okay or high? But beauty with the CM is that really opened up originally it was created for most balanced, cleanest, distinct espresso experience I've ever had. But that also opened up the doors that I can say, oh, wow, well, I can actually make even more funkier coffees. And, we can ferment them for a little bit longer. We can change the temperature a little bit more. We can play with the headspace. All of these things will make a huge difference. So suddenly we are in control of the fermentation as opposed to fermentation controlling us. We can taste the coffees and we can see what's the potential of this coffee. And as an example, also, we can ferment the coffee for not only for different flavor characters, but for different beverage. Is it espresso? Is it for milk? Is it for filter? So for milk course, obviously, I've served raspberry candy, famous raspberry candy, tasting notes, which they're super high scoring coffees. And I remember a lot of people tasting it in Australia. They said, well, I've never scored 6 in my life ever to anyone. And I think this is time now to score 6. For some of these judges, it's the first and last time they scored 6 because they used now on a fruity milk-based coffees, but back then, that did not exist. Everyone would serve coffee that reminds us of chocolates or caramels, etc.
Yeah.
So that was something very, very new and very different. So 2015 was kind of like that gateway for carbonic maceration. And after a lot of success, I felt that we've proven the concept, if I can call it, with WBC. And then I started traveling throughout the world to, firstly to share this knowledge with a lot of the farmers I work with. But then as well, I share that knowledge with, as you probably would know, Perfect Daily Grind, with I think, very famous article for that year. Seminars in Korea, so it's quite a few different countries, so people can really use that idea and making their own. And it's very humbling to see that process now it's here to stay. It's not just a gimmick that we use it for 1 or 2 years and we don't use it. It has helped quite a few producers to get better premiums for their crops. And I hope that, people also, or some people enjoy the taste of what that process does as well.
Enjoying this episode of the Coffee and Technology podcast? This podcast would not be possible without the support of Cropster. Whether it's tracking harvest yields, roastery and inventory management, or simply tracking brew recipes, Cropster Origin, Cropster Roast, and Cropster Cafe can help you streamline your workflows and help you operate more efficiently.
So I have a question related to the CM. You say that the process control is now in the farmer's hands, and I fully agree, because that was and is still a big problem. Does it also mean that the outcome can be predicted better, and can the farmer produce the same or a similar quality or flavor profile year after year after year? Because it's one of those things I feel is what's so much hit and miss, right? Year 1 was great. Year 2 was bad. Year 3 was okay. And that was tough for the market, for the coffee, for cafes serving those coffees to brand, or for farmers to brand themselves with a certain quality, which then is always changing. So I guess a few questions in one. But
yeah, absolutely. No, it's a great question. I mean, to answer that, absolutely. It's and you've kind of said it nicely. You're not going to make coffee 100% consistent. That's just not going to happen. It's the product that we work with. We know that every crop will be different. We also know that when you pick your coffee cherries at the beginning of the season and middle of the season, end of the season, they will taste a little bit different as well. So by us doing that same controlled fermentation, they're not going to taste the same. However, if we understand how our coffee tastes at the beginning of the season, and we know that possibly it's lacking a little bit of flavor complexity, it's not as as big or as rich as it is a crop that you're going to pick middle of the season, end of the season, well, we can use that opportunity to change the process, to highlight more flavor, to bring the more flavor out of the early crop coffees. Because coffee, I mean, I'm talking this not with one example, with hundreds of examples that we have done all over the world, but I can take an example, a farm, Finca Betty, a very first farm. First picking, it's about 84 points. Second picking is about 86, 87. Light picking is about 89, 90 points if we do everything correctly, of course. The harvest in Finca Betty starts in December and it finishes in June. Some of you might know we have organized late harvest auctions in Honduras for quite a few years. That's because there was no market for these coffees. And in my opinion, they're the best coffees that Santa Barbara Mountain produces because the maturation time is so much more longer. So when we're thinking of fermentation, when we're thinking of these 90-point coffees that are late harvest, we don't necessarily want to put this in a tank in CO2 for like extended period of time to actually bring some different flavors in a cup. Coffee flavors are already there. But maybe if we are serving that coffee as an espresso, we might ferment it long enough to have a bit more sweetness and a bit more texture in there if we want to. And there are the techniques that nowadays we can actually do to target improved tactile balance or improved sweetness. Or there are techniques that we can just allow these flavors to be, instead of 2 ticks, as I mentioned, to give us a 3-tick expression without really changing them. But if we have early harvest coffee, that's 84-point coffee, well, as we all know, the coffee farmers, these coffees that they hatch okay prices, but they're not as good prices at 86, 87. And just by, putting this coffee in a container and, having it, sitting there for a number of days, looking after it with obviously flushing the CO2 and have the coffee in a correct temperature environment, we can push certain fruits. We can push red fruits, we can push purple fruits, we can push yellow fruits. And that can also be the determination of what customer likes. If customers prefer a little bit more of this purple, cacao nibby characters, that's fine. That can be done easily. If customers want a little bit more cleaner expression, that can be done with that 84 lot that was originally, but we can turn it to be 86, 87. Like our success rate normally is when we start working on a new farm. Depending if farm is high elevated and healthy farm, it's a 1 year process to make coffees, to have a range of coffees that are successful. But on a second farm, which was another university that I call it Nicaragua farm, which is only 1,000 meter altitude, Catimo varietals, Catura varietals, or common varietals. And the reason we purchased that farm is to actually see how we can turn, commercial farming or commercial farm into specialty farm. To be honest, it took us 2 or 3 years with the experiments to actually be able to add value to these coffees. Coffees originally were 81, 82 points. Now they are solid 86, 87, 88, 89 point coffees. But that was not easy because we had issues on a farm. We had issues with the soil and trees and everything else. But once you know the recipes and once you understand exactly what needs to be happening with a certain plot, with certain varietal on that particular farm, 90% these coffees taste the same. Like when we receive samples from Jamison Savage, we've been working with him the longest with the Finca Debra. We would have a blind table and we will just go, that's a vivid profile, that's indigo profile, that's this profile. Like just by tasting the coffees, we understand what the profiles are. So it's, they're not going to be the same every year, but people can recognize that profile that you have achieved through that specific way of fermentation, and you can, you can replicate that for the season pretty much the same.
That's fantastic. Very, very, I don't know, but the word coffee alchemy kind of came into my mind when you were talking about the processes a little bit and converting and like making certain adjustments. But talking about these adjustments, what's the investment or the was it the mindset more than financial investments, or is it a lot more work?
Of course, it's a lot more work. Like it's a work when it comes, like, in order to invest or in order to ferment coffee where we can control fermentation, we need to have in the environment where we can, change the temperatures or control the temperature where coffee is fermented. So whether it's a house or whether it has air conditioning or whatever it is. with obviously containers, CO2 cylinders. We most importantly, and you would love that, data. Without data, we cannot do anything. Because just like when you're roasting coffee and we have a Cropster, and I actually, when I explain people about farming, I always talk about you. And
Thank you.
Talk about Cropster. So yeah, I might actually, just reminded me of now. But now I'm doing it. So obviously, when you're roasting the coffee and when you taste the coffee and you go, oh, this is a little bit baked, you can look at your profile and you can say, well, this is why it's baked. This is what we've done. And then you can go back and roast the coffee again. It's the same thing with coffee fermentation. Like you want to have all of your parameters organized, like everything that before coffee gets into the tank, the coffee needs to be measured. The amount of time the coffee spends in the tank, the temperature of the environment, the humidity of the environment, and also measuring what's happening with the coffee, how is it behaving in that process. And as we finish the fermentation, we can have this fermentation curve, just like we have a roasting curve. So when we taste that coffee, and this is what we normally would do, is with all of our, like in Nicaragua farm, as an example, we have done for the first year 100 experiments. Each experiment has been recorded and logged. And out of these 100 experiments, only 15 were okay. So it's a very good data that we have, because we know that the other 85 experiments we will not ever do again.
What's the sample size you need for that? Like, what's the quantities you have to work with?
So we used to do bigger quantities. Then I said, well, this is costing a lot of money, so like let's drop it down. But now we're using quantities that we end up only with 2-3 kilos of green bean. It's enough. We don't need more. We prefer not to do less, because you really want to see how your coffee is behaving with a few different roast profiles, how coffee is behaving after 2 months, after 4 months, after 6 months, etc. Because we want to make sure that we can taste coffee 12 months later and really understand everything. Because normally when we talk about carbonic maceration, we just don't talk about that part of the stuff. We talk about everything, how we're drying the coffee and storing it and etc. That's. I think I lost myself with the question.
No, that was the question. Like 3 kilos, and you can do that. And I like what you added, actually, that your vision is not only that process of like fermentation and then cupping immediately, and that's where it ends, but you also go further. And it's like, well, we look at roasting profiles, we look at over time, because that's an important element. Taking into account most roasters won't get the coffee 3 to 6 months later, right? Because of how trading is set up.
And I'm curious too, with all that. So you have like obviously all this data from the fermentation. You have data that you use from the roasting and cupping side of it in Cropster. But I'm wondering, in your vision now to like connect the entire supply chain, how does all that data translate to the final point of the supply chain in the cafe with the barista brewing the coffee and then presenting that to the customer? So at the end of the day, it's the barista is the customer facing part of the supply chain.
Yeah, it's a good question. See, I believe that all of this information that we talk about, what's the bricks that we pick the coffee in, or what's the pH that we ferment, how long have we developed the coffee while we roast, or how many microns do we have in our grinder, or what's the TDS? I think they're exciting for us, industry professionals. And at least with our customers, we don't really share that information. We don't share it because it's not necessarily because it's secret. I think it's boring for majority of them. The reason I can say that maybe other customers in the other countries, other shops, they're a little bit different. But the moment we start talking all of these numbers that we get excited about, they kind of want to fall asleep. But the moment we talk about, hey, I have a coffee from this man that's been growing coffee for so many years. We've done all of this crazy fermentation and processing, but we talk about it only for a little bit. But more importantly now, this their coffee is tasting like this and this and this, and this is the impact that we're making for that particular farm or that community, and this is the work we've done together. We love to share things that are more to do with the feeling. that, how will make people feel. And of course, it's a flavor characters and as well as the story that comes with that coffee to make, to make it memorable, not to say, hey, I love Ona coffee, I actually love coffee from this particular farmer. Or now, back in the days, our customers would come and buy cappuccino with vanilla syrup. That was 12, 15 years ago when we started. But now they come in, they're actually asking for coffees from particular producers to made particular way.
Wow.
So they've grown, that kind, the customer base have grown a lot just because of that storytelling and story showing. And I'm more excited by them asking coffee, hey, can I have a coffee from Don Fabio from Honduras? Because, we love his philosophy about the coffee, philosophy about the life, rather than, can I have a coffee that was picked with a 12% bricks or, 5, whatever, TDS? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm the romantic one, I guess, more. And I prefer to sort of present coffees like that to our customers. But in saying that, without data, we can't really do that job as accurately, as properly, as confidently as well, to say, hey, you're going to taste jasmine and it's going to be awesome. We need data for that information. That is super important from the farm level, roasting, barista, etc.
Yeah, no, and it's super interesting that you mentioned that your customer base has now even gotten to a point of asking for coffees from a specific producer. Because I'm used to here, in some parts of the States where we're still asking for origins, still asking for countries in general, and maybe some customers might ask for a certain region in that country. So I think it's fascinating that you've gotten to a point with your customers. They're asking for people's work essentially, which is a beautiful part of it.
Yeah, of course, it's ultimate goal, I guess. But again, not all the customers, but our customers are recognizing what we're doing, and they love that. But I think it's important that we, back to my 2011 story when I found my wife, that we celebrate producers in a way, and we love that people enjoy our coffees, but we love even more when they say, hey, I love coffee from this particular producer. That means that we've done a job okay.
Yeah. So then, with the focus a little bit on producers, I'm curious. I want to know how kind of get your feeling of how. So with the recent World Barista Championships, you coached some competitors, I think from some producing countries, but I'm wondering how you left, what you felt leaving host or leaving WBC after a producing country won the event, and then I think among top 5 there was a few other producing country competitors. I mean, from producing country to the top stage, I mean, how did you feel?
Oh, goosebumps, of course. Goosebumps. I mean, as you mentioned, like I had two competitors I was coaching, Hugh Kelly from Australia. I've also, for the same reason, coached that, the reason why I love coffee, coached the Martin Shabaya from Africa, from Kenya. And producing country that the competitor that has not made the finals before or semis, I guess without a wild card. So even when they were announcing the finalists, and to know that Diego made a final, like even though I did not really, I know Diego very well, he's a great friend, but I didn't coach him. But of course you jump, you're happy, you start having these emotions. And then when Hugh Kelly got announced, because he's been working with us for 10 years, I'm coach. I love him. He's an unbelievable coffee professional. Of course I was happy, but when Martin was announced as a number 6, like tears were coming in my head. Like it was just like, oh my God, and you can't control these emotions. You don't want to control them, actually. Just let it out. It's fine. It's okay. Enjoy it. So I was super proud to see Diego to win Colombian, the Colombian to win WBC. He's been competing for so many years, and he has, I think, similar story like Sasha at the beginning. It has not been easy for him as well. And the way he's done it and how much sacrifices he made in order to achieve his goal, I think it's very inspiring for not only for producing countries, but for anyone in the world. So yeah, it's awesome to see that happening. And I hope this is just not, we've seen it before with El Salvador, obviously, with Guatemala, where we had the WBC champions from producing countries, but not for a while. So it's so nice to see it again. But I think this host Milan event was amazing because we haven't had event for 2 years. And everyone felt like a family. It was very small. It was very cozy. It was just a beautiful event that, you have not seen your friends, your family members, if I can say, for a while. And it's a small event, but was very, very, very meaningful for all of us that went there. So we're very happy that it has happened.
No, that's beautiful. And kind of with on this like note of like inspiration and motivation, I kind of also want to know your feelings of, so when you visited the natural coffee forest in Ethiopia, that's probably a dream for many coffee professionals to just be in that kind of energy and presence. But when you first visited, I don't know how many times you've been, but when you first went, like what kind of feeling did you take from that experience? And like, how did that change your approach or just your vision and your approach to coffee in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, that Ethiopian Biloya cup that I fell in love with so much. And so I decided to visit Ethiopia first time back in 2010, 11. I'm getting old now, so my numbers might not be as correct, but it's either 2010 or 2011. And obviously went to Sidama, Guji, Yog, all of the usual stuff. But one of the, I wanted to see the coffee, like all of these forest coffees, what they're like. And so we obviously we went to Bench Maji, where there's a lot of forest coffees. And then we went to Bonga, Kafa. It took a while to get there. It wasn't easy, like a lot of hiking and walking, etc., like full day exhibition.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same time, when I saw the very first coffee tree, I was shocked. Is this a tree? Like they don't look like a coffee trees. It's a jungle. So there was just that crazy excitement that I felt like a kid in a lolly shop. Like there's so many of these lollies and I can go anywhere and do anything I want. And like I'm in a paradise and really felt like a kid again. But then, 10, 15, 30 minutes later, I was a little bit disappointed because there were no cherries and I could not see any of the seeds. So I left Ethiopia a little bit kind of, I wish I could take some of these cherries, or I wish I can, put them in my hand and see what they look like and, what's the shape, etc. So several years later, we organized another expedition to go to the forest, and which that was recorded with a Coffee Heroes movie, as you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And that was amazing because we managed to, we spent, a lot of time in there. We managed to find a lot of different cherries, different shapes, different sizes. Some of the coffee beans look like soccer ball, like super round. Some of them look like we now know Eugenioides. And so they look like different species, not Arabica. So we've managed to collect quite a few of them, and now we have them growing in 3 countries in Central America. Wow. So hopefully next year we'll be able to taste and see what they like. Yes, I'm really excited to see that at least we can we can see what it tastes like. And they are in Panama, they're doing okay. About 70% of their coffees are, they've been germinated. They're doing fine. In Nicaragua, they're doing more than okay as well. And in El Salvador, they are doing about 50% very successful. So I can't wait 12 more months before we have a slurp. Yeah, but it's a fascinating. Like what I've done is after we pulp the coffees, after we process them, we lined up about 30 seeds, and every seed would look very different. Wow. And and maybe 20 or 30% of what we've seen, they look like a classic Arabica, or your Harars, or maybe like really nice and long beans. But all of the other beans, they like, some of them are super small, almost the size of the pepper. Other ones are like a super pointy, like your Robusta Eugenioris on one side, but then round on the other side. And as I mentioned, some other ones are like a soccer ball. So we got to be patient a little bit longer.
Yeah. No, this is all amazing. So inspiring, so motivational. I love listening to all of it. And thank you so much for your time, Sasha. It was amazing to listen to your experiences.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a pleasure talking to you, and also pleasure working with the Cropster team. Keep up doing a great work as you always do.
Thank you, Sasha. Much appreciated and very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Coffee and Technology Podcast. To learn more about Cropster, subscribe to this podcast and follow us on social media. For more educational content, visit cropster.com/learn.